Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel Vigil, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel Vigil.
Oh, Russell Wilson. Back in the headlines again, but this time it's kind of on his own terms. And if I'm being completely honest, it was the most normal I've ever seen Russell Wilson. He joined the I Am Athlete podcast with Brandon Marshall, and he spoke on pretty much everything, ranging from football to fatherhood to his time with Seattle, his relationship with Pete Carroll, to so many different things. But was it a good look for the Broncos' current quarterback, Russell Wilson? So here to debate that today, we've got our very own Richi Carni joining us. Thank you again, my friend. How's your weekend?
It was good. It was good. Keep it low key, nothing crazy.
You weren't doing any hour and 30-minute long podcast to describe your feelings?
I was not. I've been telling Brandon Marshall for months now to get me on, but that phone doesn't ring.
I want to know, they clearly weren't in Denver, so I'm curious if they were in the Seattle house.
Could have been. Yeah, I mean, Brandon obviously has ties to that area. He played there as well. I don't know if he has a house there or whatnot. My guess is they were probably in California or something because Russ loves to spend a lot of time out there.
Yeah, that San Diego house that we all remember so well 2 off seasons ago. But the main question of the show today is, was it a good or a bad look for Russell Wilson? I'm leaning towards, I don't know. I can see where people could say it's a bad look for him. But honestly, I felt like this was Russell Wilson's opportunity to tell the truth and to tell his side of the story. And he didn't bash anybody. He didn't say anything negative. It honestly made me really want them to keep Russell Wilson just because he has so many good things. Like, he's so integrity heavy. Like, there was just so many things that I walked away with. And I was like, dang, Russ, like, such a good guy. You held back on sharing all of the drama you were going with your teammates. Like, there was so much. But at the exact same time, like, does it do him any good? Was this his final goodbye to Broncos country, saying, you know what? It's never going to work out with Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos, so goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, you could go good look, bad look, right?
I feel like I was so sentimental right there where I was like, goodbye. Like,
yeah.
Is that what this was?
I think that whether that was his manifesting of it or his final, farewell or whatever, I think that's what will happen. Good look, bad look is kind of subjective, right? You can talk about because everybody's got an agenda. So it's probably a good look for him personally because he's trying to market himself to the Broncos and most likely beyond the Broncos for his next opportunity. But if I'm being honest, it made me sad watching it.
Me too.
But I think for me, it was actually like a twofold reason. I think it made me sad a little bit from some of the things you were touching on of just like, I just really wanted it to work.
Me too.
I don't think I think Russ is a good man.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a good guy. I think he's been a good teammate for large portions of his career. And,
Agreed.
He clearly embodies a lot of the characteristics and things that you would want. But it doesn't change the fact that the play, the level of play and the skill level hasn't been there. And I think what made me sad about it beyond that from a sentimental sadness was it made me sad that to me that ultimately finally validated a lot of the frustrations that we have. I thought it was fake. I thought a lot of it was fake.
Really?
Yeah, because
I thought this was the most honest we have seen Russell Wilson.
See, was it though? Because I think he was honest about all the things that he wanted to be honest about. How about the part when Brandon Marshall, was talking, Russ was spitting out all these things about how he believes in people and he wants to do this and he's a positive guy and he doesn't believe in putting people down and all that. And Brandon Marshall asked him one thing. He was like, Russ, you got to give me one time where you decided to not take the high road and go low. Come on, right? And he wouldn't do it. But, I don't know about that. I've never done that. Or like when he had an opportunity to really get raw and real about.
But I really don't think he does it.
You don't
think he is so
Rachel,
deep in his faith that I don't think he does it. I truthfully
don't.
I disagree. And we know he had, I don't remember his name and may he rest in peace, but he had that coach that had passed away that had like transformed his mindset. I really don't think he does it. How easily could he have gone into the locker room and been like, screw the Denver Broncos, look at what they're trying to do. If that happens to me, I set the precedent here. That means all of you could lose your
when the
injury
realest
guarantees.
Russell Wilson, when I think the realest Russell Wilson was that we ever got? In the locker room after he got benched. And he actually did. He dropped the whole, cheery sunshine routine and all that. And he said that how upset he was, and that to me was real and raw, and that to me is relatable. Russell Wilson to me now at this point, and I didn't really see it as much when he was in Seattle because we're not
paying attention.
We're not as close to it, and so I loved Russ, and I still like Russ. I think that he was a really fun player who played at a high level for a long time, and no one can ever take that away from him. But I think now what we're getting now that Russell Wilson's play is declining is that the main thing that Russell Wilson is now is just somebody who is obsessive and maniacal about crafting his perception from a public standpoint to be the way that it wants to be. And, it's an example of like, when you bond with somebody, you need to connect and relate to them on some level.
Yeah.
With Russell Wilson's constant pursuit of perfection from an outward level, who can ever relate to that? Rachel, can you relate to somebody who's never taken a low blow?
No, but I definitely did look at it and I'm like, you know what? Who cares if Joe Schmo is going at me on Twitter? Like, why do I need to look at it? I can turn it off just like he turns off the TV. Like, I don't need to sit here and do that.
But if you really wanted to, and Russell Wilson is very faith-based, and that's something I respect about him.
But I personally, I believe in karma. So, I try not to do a lot of stuff for the fact that I don't want karma to come back to me.
Rach, for him to sit up there and say that, it was always all love with Pete Carroll, and, I've never had a bad thing to say about Richard Sherman, all things that he just basically laid out there. And you could tell Brandon Marshall was kind of like, haha, I don't understand your guys' relationship and all that. But like, what would have been interesting. What would have been real if you were really trying to use because I think Russell Wilson really does try to lead by example, right?
Agreed.
He wants to be, and I think it's a fantastic quality.
Yeah.
But I don't think the way to go about it is to pull off this infallible persona of, I don't believe in this, I know anything wrong. I think you need a relatability there. Like if Russell Wilson had sat across from Brandon Marshall like this and been like, you know what? Things got bad in Seattle. I was not in the right headspace. Pete and I really stopped seeing eye to eye. And I feel like I had some resentment in my heart and I wanted to get out of there. And it wasn't until Pete got fired and DK Metcalf called me, which is how he said he found out about the gathering. When DK Metcalf called me, you know what? I just realized that enough's enough. And Pete and I weren't in a good place, but we had been through so many things before and we had that relationship, and I just really wanted to get that back. That's freaking relatable. Not, it's always been sunshine and rainbows. So it just felt very fake to me.
I second what you just said there, where it's like, all right, there clearly was
Richard
drama.
Sherman was clowning him on TV every single week. They were bringing up Russell Wilson plush dolls.
But what could Russ have done in that situation? Which is where it goes back to, I truthfully do think that Russ just is like, I'm going to be the bigger person, whatever. Because he could have gone to that party and been like, you know what, Richard Sherman, screw you.
He took the high road in the moment, which I think is right. But the moment has long passed, and someone's asking you in an interview setting to be honest about it. Doesn't mean you have to go out there and go scorched earth on the back end and take back everything you said. But I think it's fair to be honest, be like, you know what, that stuff, I'm human. That stuff does bother me when I see a former teammate of mine who I was, in the foxhole with, and we won Super Bowls together.
Yeah.
And he's clowning me on national TV and let's ride and this and that and this and that. And, my former head coach is making veiled comments about his new quarterbacks and how great everything is now that I'm gone. And I'm like, that stuff does bother me. It doesn't change the fact that I want to take the high road, but I'm human and I can at least admit that I have those feelings too. And it's like with Russ, it's like Russ doesn't get mad. He doesn't get sad.
No.
He doesn't get hungry. He doesn't use the bathroom.
He gets 6 massages a week though.
Exactly. Right. And so it's just like, that to me is with these athletes that are so physically gifted beyond a level that us mere mortals could ever. And that is one thing that I think I resonated a little bit with Russ that he was saying about part of his motivation for not doing it was he was like, it's already so hard to get to where we are. And it is. I mean, you talk about like 1%, maybe less than 1% of high school athletes go on to play college athletics. And an even smaller percentage of those college athletes go on to play professional. And then an even smaller percentage of those professional athletes make it beyond a year or 2, 3, whatever the average lifespan is. And you're talking about a guy that's going into year 13.
Yeah.
So I believe Russ when he says that, but I just feel like when you have these guys that are on such a pedestal and they're this and they're that, I think it's those moments of relatability that we crave as people and as fans to say, hey, they are kind of just like Patrick Mahomes has a dad bod just like I do. And, Jason Kelsey Jason Kelsey roots for his team as obnoxiously as I do.
Yeah.
And this and that and this and that, or and you don't get that with Russ.
Mm-hmm.
Russ is kind of intentionally by his own design setting himself apart. And I think that this whole I Am Athlete interview, which by the way, I think is one of the most fascinating podcasts out there.
Amazing.
I think Brandon Marshall does an unbelievable job with it. And you get these guys in moments where they can be real and raw and relatable. And I just don't feel like Russ was in a genuine sense.
So fascinating. So let us know in the comments if you did, because I walked away feeling like I had a better grasp on who Russell Wilson was and kind of his mindset. Not necessarily that I got the whole truth on every situation, but Richie obviously felt differently.
I think you did. I think you did get a true sense of who Russ was and how he does that. It's just that what I took away from that was sad for me because it confirmed a lot of the things that it like finally cemented a lot of the things that we've been feeling, that he is kind of a robot. He is, and you know who else was like that? Tim Tebow. He really was. Tim was all about the kneeling and the Tebowing and the this and the that, and everything with Tim Tebow is just, I'm so blessed and I'm this and I'm that. And it's like, does Tim Tebow ever have a bad day?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, it's fair.
What's Russell Wilson's testimonial from that perspective? When everything is always cheery and chipper and positive, and we just got to believe. And it's like, sometimes it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to say things that you don't mean or whatever. I think that's just missing from him. And I think it's part of the reason why he's had a hard time connecting.
So I feel like you and I are going to disagree on this. I walked away when Brandon Marshall, which by the way, he was fantastic on this point. He was like, okay, let's talk about life after the Denver Broncos, which is the way essentially it feels like it's going to lead. And he pulls up the list of teams on his phone. He's like, the Steelers, the Patriots, the Commander, like he named off 15 teams or whatever. And he's like, we'll just stick with the top 4. And he's like, well, what about the Steelers? And Russ goes, well, number 1 right now is the Denver Broncos because that's where I am. I looked at that as like, it's so easy when you're listening to a conversation like that. Like if I brought up 4 teams and I was like, okay, like I'm going to go with number 1, the option right there. And he brings up the Denver Broncos. I was like, that's such loyalty right there to the Denver Broncos. But did you just think that was scripted?
100% scripted.
See, it's fascinating.
Rachel, 100%. Number 1 would be the Denver Broncos. It's the team that benched him, that he's at odds with the head coach with the whole time. Why would his number 1 team be the Denver Broncos?
Because that's
with
where he
how
is right
badly it went, though.
Also,
he's not happy.
I will say there's definitely something with Sean Payton, because Brandon Marshall's face when he asked him, he's like, even with Sean? And Russ was like, even with Sean. And I was all, ooh, there's some tea right there.
That's what I'm saying. Now, listen, I'm not going to harp on Russ for saying what he said there as much as I did about this previous stuff about just being a real raw, like human being when you're given the setting to do so. Because to a certain degree, Russ is still under contract. Negotiations are still going. And it would be a bad look, even if Russell Wilson did want to move on from the Broncos, which I ultimately believe that he does. And I think the team wants to move on from him. I think that it would be a bad look for him to kick that door in on the way out and kind of, say his number 1 team would be the Pittsburgh Steelers when he's still under contract. Like, that's a little bit different for me. So I'm not going to fault Russ as much for saying that as I did with some of the other stuff. But yes, I don't think if you were to give Russell Wilson a shot of truth serum behind a closed door, that he'd be like, yes, I really, really, really want to come back to the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton.
Even though Sean Payton's been bullying me for a year.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
What do you think about him saying, like, I'm setting a precedent for all of these players so that nobody else gets asked about, removing their injury guarantee?
I think that's something real. I mean, I think that we hear that all the time. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we had the running back summits, and we had all the top running backs in the league coming together to try to stand tall on their money to protect the integrity of the position as a whole. And that's kind of them, like the Austin Ecklers and the guys that are holding out to preserve that for the future players of the position. So I do think that there's a precedent there, just like Kirk Cousins negotiating a fully guaranteed salary, opened the door for and kind of set a new bar for quarterbacks in the NFL. So I do believe that. And I don't think Russell Wilson should be under any obligation to void his injury guarantee. No. And I think that's teams will chew up and spit out and grind out players for their benefit.
And if one player does it, it opens the door for everyone.
Without a blink of an eye, teams will do that. So I don't fault any player for, to a certain degree, holding their own and looking out for their interests, even if it means that it makes things a little bit harder for the team. I think there's give and take there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he is setting a standard of like, don't let yourself get bullied.
Don't let the big brother come in and just because they sign your paperwork, like hold your own. I agree. Did it make you want Russell Wilson to be the quarterback of the Denver Broncos?
No.
It didn't.
It did not.
But see, that kind of goes back against what you said because you're like, I wanted it so badly to work out.
I did, but I did want it to work out, but I think it was pretty clear over the course of the 2 years.
Even though he brought up the win against the Bears and how they were able to come from behind and all of these things.
Sure, they didn't
Damn,
win.
I feel like I got screwed on this podcast. You're like so level-headed, and I'm like, crap.
They didn't.
I was so sad.
They didn't win enough either year. I mean, you gave up such a you took such a massive swing that it maybe it's a little unfair that because of the price that you gave up, which Russell Wilson doesn't necessarily have all the control over, but he did have some because of his no trade clause and whatever. Maybe it's unfair to place the expectations and that bar on Russell Wilson because of what was paid to get him. But it is the reality of the situation, and there is a business side of it. They didn't win enough games. It didn't pan out the way that we thought. I think Russell Wilson's time in Denver uncovered a significant amount of deficiency masking that Pete Carroll and that coaching staff were able to do that we didn't even know existed.
True.
Because he doesn't look like Seattle Russ.
No.
And I don't think that that's all just
because... But is it because they don't have a running back that makes... I mean, Marshawn was insane.
Yeah, but listen, I think that that's part of it. I think that you have to tip your cap to Pete Carroll. I mean, look what he's done with Geno Smith. You know? Geno Smith was a journeyman, nowhere QB.
It feels like Pete Carroll, and he's a lot like Andy Reid, where he adjusts to his quarterback. Like he goes with what his quarterback is, their strengths are. Doesn't feel like Sean Payton did that. And
that's true. Maybe he doesn't because he put all of his eggs in Drew Brees' basket for a long time. But he made some good showings out of Jameis Winston, who was not so long ago a 30-30 guy, as in 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions in a season. So I do think that Sean Payton has the ability to go with his quarterback. And I think Sean Payton made a lot of concessions. I think we need to keep reiterating that. I think Sean Payton made a lot of concessions to what his offense and what he would run to try to maximize the deficiencies or the skill sets of Russ and minimize the deficiencies that he presents. It just didn't pan out the way that we wanted it to. And Sean Payton, I think if Sean Payton was the head coach last year or 2 years ago, instead of Nathaniel Hackett, and he was getting a second season to do that, I think we might have seen more. But at the end of the day, I don't think you saw enough for me to go, I want to run this back again.
Well, here's the thing about it too, is this was Russell Wilson's goodbye. If he was still under Sean Payton and everything was fine and dandy, he would never have done this interview. Yeah. Despite him and Brandon Marshall being really good friends, he would never have done it because we have Sean Payton's comments about running a presidential campaign and all the things that Russ did. He knows he's going to be let go by the Denver Broncos, and this was his way to be like, Denver, I still love you and appreciate you.
Exactly.
But they didn't want to work
with me. Russ, from his own image standpoint, he can't say anything other than he wants to be here, because then the narrative shifts. Well, Russ, it's the Carmelo thing. Carmelo wanted out. Russ is like, no, I want to be here, even though I know deep down that I would rather be somewhere else, and I know they want to get rid of me. By maintaining that identity of like, no, I committed to this city, and I did this and I did that, and I want to win 2 Super Bowls with Denver in the next 5 years, and just like whatever else we can conjure up.
Winning 2 Super Bowls in the next 5 years for any
he
team.
Maintains that, not innocence, but that position of like, they gave up on me. Yeah. I didn't give up on them. Even if in his own heart and in his own mind, which he would never tell you because he's not being real.
If you had to ask, I got asked this question. I work over at Fox 31 and I help out there sometimes. And they asked me, if you had to do any truth serum to Sean Payton, what would you ask? So I'm going to ask you the same thing. You could ask Russell Wilson any question and he had to tell you the truth. What would you ask him?
Oh, that's a really good question, because that you have to weigh, like, there's so many little minute things that I would want to know about Russell Wilson, but I feel like you can't wait. This is like getting a wish from a genie and wishing that you had like, $1,000, $1 million or whatever it is. Like, you need to be more broad than that.
My question for Sean Payton, just to like change it up a little bit while you think on that, was did you ever have any real intention of making it work with Russell Wilson here in Denver?
That is a fantastic
Thank you.
question.
Thank you.
My
I'll
gut
bow.
my gut would tell me that he did, but he took the job because he had assurances that if it didn't work out,
Yep.
he could move on. And so he didn't really care all that much.
Agreed. Any question for Russell Wilson?
I think I would want to ask him. See, is this cheating? Because can it be a question where I would ask for 5 more questions.
If I had a genie.
Yeah, because I would want to know. I want to know how Russ really feels about a lot of these things. So I could ask him a similar question about Sean Payton and, what do you really think of Sean Payton?
Mm-hmm.
Just to get that. Or like when you, okay.
I'm ready. Hold on. What question would Richi Carni ask Russell Wilson if he had to tell the truth? Ready, set, go.
If you could go back in time, would you still kind of force your way out of Seattle? Knowing what you know now and how it went in Denver.
If I was him, I wouldn't.
And even where you could go, if you could go back in time, would you swallow your pride and potentially some of your impression of yourself, the let Russ cook thing, and would you stay underneath Pete Carroll, John Schneider, all those people who you fought to get away from because they were holding you back?
Yeah.
Would you give it all? Would you forget all of that
and
just keep going on and maybe try to win another Super Bowl or 2 with Seattle?
Feel the chill of the trophy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget that quote. I think mine to Russell Wilson, if I had to ask any question, would be besides the NFLPA thing, what was the worst thing the Denver Broncos did to you?
That's a good question because when it cut regardless of the team, whether it's your favorite team, whatever, the NFL has a seedy underbelly, and there's a lot of really sticky, not so pleasant things that go on with the business side of things, and you hear it so many times from doctors kind of looking the other way at player injuries, and that's how we get the concussion epidemic and all of that, to teams making promises and then backdooring them. Yeah. Like we saw that with Vance Joseph and some of those players that I think it was TJ Ward. It was like Elway never had any intention of bringing it back, but he didn't tell VJ that. So when VJ and TJ talked, it was like this, and then he cut him, and it's just like, so there's a lot of sticky things. So I think if you opened up the skeleton closet,
I think I'd be a little scared to find out what I would learn, to be honest.
100%. I really do. I think knowing what he knows now, I think Russell Wilson would take it back.
Oh, I would. If I'm him,
I think he would. I don't think he would ever say it. Again, if you asked Russ, he'd be like, "No, everything happens for a reason, and you just got to put your faith." And
do you think he'll win another Super Bowl?
No.
I think he's going to, and I think Denver's going to be like, "What the hell?"
You think Russell Wilson's going to win another Super Bowl? Where?
I don't know, but I do believe in good karma and bad karma, and boy, oh boy, do I think that we're going to get slapped in the face here.
Well, listen, the Broncos have been on the boot end of bad karma for almost a decade now. It feels like they sold their soul for Super Bowl 50, and we're just wandering in purgatory now, paying for it. To win
a championship, unfortunately. One thing, not Broncos related, but Colorado sports related, Val Nichushkin was cleared to return back to practice. This is a really good thing for the Colorado Avalanche. They desperately need this. Oh, are you breathing like a big sigh of relief, or do you still think this team needs help by the trade deadline?
This team needs help by the trade deadline. Listen, anytime you can get a top 6 guy, especially one with the impact that Val has back, I think it's good news. This team needs help, but they need Val to get to a point where getting help at the trade deadline even matters. Because without Val, there is no help at the trade deadline that you can get to try to be where you want to be. I mean, Rachel, if you think about it, I believe if you go back to the 21-22 season, the Avs are like a 500 hockey team without Val. And with him, they're pushing a 700 win percentage. I mean, that is a 40% difference.
Massive.
In your win total with a guy versus without a guy.
Agreed.
So you can talk about, McKinnon and Rantanen and Cale Makar. They have other skilled players. I think sometimes that masks, the how much you're going to lose by not having a player, re the Kadri situation about how they never replaced him, and look at how much they've been chasing since then.
Yep.
But make no bones about it, this team needs Val.
Yeah,
if they want to do anything, and they feel as they should, like they're still in a championship window, only being 2 years removed from it. They need him. They need as much of him as they can. They need him at the highest level that they can. And then they probably, as they have all season, need a little bit more beyond that.
Agreed. All right, plenty of good stuff from Richi Carni. As always, let us know how you guys are feeling on Twitter, on the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, please drop us a comment, subscribe, and like, and let us know. I'm going to go try and figure out when we can talk to Val Nichushkin following an Avs practice. So we will see you guys tomorrow for Denver Sports Daily at 10 a.m. and another episode of Coffee Break right here at 12 p.m. Have a wonderful Monday, everybody. Get back to work. Bye.